2:59:59. How great does that sound? So much better than 3 hours, that's for certain. Okay, let me explain a moment. If you are a marathon runner and you've got under 3 hours 20 or maybe somewhere a little bit closer to that 3-hour barrier, I bet at some point you have dreamt of going under 3 hours for the marathon. However, to run 26 miles in less than 3 hours does require a lot of strength, fitness, consistency in your training, the correct pacing, the right nutrition, as well as a really strong mind. And that is a lot to comprehend. So today I'm going to be helping you by breaking it down and guiding you to training for a sub 3-hour marathon. Before we get on to the hard work, we probably should address the pace that you're going to need to hold to hit said time, and also where your half and 10K times should be at, as I'm afraid it isn't quite as simple as just doubling your half marathon time. So for this, we're going to presume that you've worked hard on your endurance and your fitness is in a good place. Well, if that's the case, then a 10K time of around 37 minutes or a half marathon of around a 1:23, 1:24 should mean you're on track for that sub 3 marathon. It does, however, depend a little bit on how your speed and fitness transfer from the shorter distances up to the marathon and slightly on the race conditions on the day. And if you are interested in seeing where you're at now, then you can find various calculators online which just need your current 5 or 10K or half marathon time to predict your full time. So you might have worked it out. In order to come in under that 3-hour marker, you'll need to average 4:15 per kilometre or 6:50 per mile. Yep, that's not hanging about. It is important to be ambitious, but you still need to be realistic with those goals. So say your 10K or half marathon prediction gives you closer to a 3-hour 30 marathon, then for the time being, I'd recommend reassessing those goals and working on that over a longer period of time. I warn you now, it is going to involve a lot of hard work and training, but like I touched on earlier, it depends slightly on where you're starting from. But let's presume you've got a good base and you've recently run a 10K or a half marathon on the pace that you need to hold. Well, ideally you want to have a minimum of 12 weeks, but ideally 16 weeks of structured training. And now you need to be hitting weeks of around 35 to 40 miles or 60 kilometers in total. And that's then going to peak at around 60 miles for a week or 100 kilometers a few weeks before your target marathon. That might sound like a lot of mileage, and it is a fair amount, but it's important that you build it up gradually so your body has time to adapt and strengthen to that load. And these runs are going to be made up of 3 key types of sessions, so a long run, a tempo style session, and some speed work. And around those, you're also going to have your easy recovery style runs and then steady runs to make up that mileage. And that does mean you're ideally going to be needing to do 5 to 6 runs a week in order to fit all of this in. Let's take a closer look at some of these key sessions, starting with the long run. Now, this one, it is essential that you build it up gradually, week by week. And ideally, you want to be peaking a few weeks before with the longest run of around 18 to 20 miles, but nothing more than 22 miles, I would recommend. Some people make the mistake of making their long run almost as long as the marathon, but actually it ends up being counteractive because it gives your body so much stress that you take a long time to recover and therefore can't do the next training session. So it kind of loses its benefit. And these sessions will help you to get aerobically fitter and really build that engine, making you stronger as a runner. And hills are brilliant here too, and the two can actually be interchanged, so aim to include either one of these sessions once per week. An example hill session would be a 70-minute run, which includes a 15-minute warm-up, and then 8 lots of 2 minutes strong uphill with a jog recovery back to the bottom, and then finish that off with a warm down until you've completed a total of 70 minutes. And you can build this up by the number of reps or the length of the hill. Alternatively, you could do a tempo run, and for this it's quite a nice idea to incorporate some sort of event, whether it's a 5K park run or your local 5 or 10K, as it's just going to naturally make you work hard without having to think too much about it. So for this, ensure you've done a really strong warm-up and you complete a nice long run-off afterwards to still make sure that run is a decent length. Alternatively, you could do breaks of that, so maybe 2.5K reps. I've got a stretch near me which I do, and I start off by just doing 2 lots of 2.5K, and as I get closer to my peak mileage a few weeks before my key marathon, I'll build that up to 4 or 5. You're running a marathon, yes, I know it's not a sprint, but you still require a certain amount of speed work. And it's a fairly broad title, but speed work basically means anything quicker than your race pace. So in this situation, that's anything quicker than 4 minutes 15 per kilometre. And for this, you could head down to the track. Alternatively, find a nice, hard, flat surface where you can really focus on running fast. And then choose a distance. I'd recommend anything from 400 metres up to a mile. And depending on what distance you do, you could alter the amount of rest and the reps accordingly, and try to target a pace of around 4 minutes a kilometre or quicker. For example, 800 metres on the track, or 8 lots of 3 minutes if you're on the road. And for this, aim to run fast but at a sustainable pace with 60 seconds or 200 metres easy for recovery. And make sure you warm up well for a session like this, and then a decent warm down will also help with your recovery. And on this topic, it's worth actually noting that there is a difference between an easy run and a steady run. So a steady run, you're working aerobically, but you're still thinking about maintaining form. It should be at a conversational pace, and it's just letting your stride flow. And I don't want you getting too fixated on pace, but if you do want a bit of a guide, I'd say somewhere between a 4:30 and a 5 minute per kilometre pace. Whereas your easy run is very much about just getting the blood flowing and just generally moving your body. So for this, you really don't need to worry about pace. Think more of effort level and try not to let it get much above a 3 out of 10. And if you do want to mix things up a little bit, or you're finding that your legs are struggling to adapt to this amount of running, then you can actually swap in your easy or steady efforts for something a little bit different. So if you do enjoy swimming or cycling, or maybe even going on the elliptical trainer in the gym, then you can actually swap one of these sessions for this. But still, keep an eye on your heart rate and intensity. However long your build period has been, you still need to make sure you factor in enough time for a taper, as there's nothing worse than putting in the hard work and then turning up on race day when your legs are still tired. That said, you don't want to ease off too soon either, as you still need your legs to feel like they know what that running pace feels like. So as you do decrease that volume, still include some faster work, so doing some strides and a bit of race pace effort so that your legs are staying nice and tuned. By race day, you should have a pretty good idea of where you're at and have that pace dialed in. But if you are using a GPS watch, I'd seriously recommend setting it to beep every kilometre for that target pace, just to keep you in check. Because if anything, and you've had the right taper, your legs will be feeling nice and fresh, and it is really tempting to go too fast at the beginning. So you need to rein it in at the start of the marathon, because if you go too hard too early, you will really pay for it later on. The final aspect to consider is nutrition, and you want to nail this. So before your race, make sure you've had a high carbohydrate meal around 3 hours before, something you've practiced with so you know you can digest that. And the 24 hours before, I'd recommend reducing or even taking out all of your fibre, just to give your stomach the best chance of behaving during the race. Hydration is also important, so make sure you're adequately hydrated, but not over the top, as you don't want anything sloshing around. And then it comes to during the race itself. For this, you really do need to have practice, especially on your long run, of taking on gels or fluids, whatever it is you're going to be using during the race. And if you're using race nutrition, make sure you've practiced with that. If not, that you're carrying your own gels, as you will certainly need to top up your energy levels because you're racing for 3 hours. Anyway, I think that just leaves me to say good luck. Trust me, it's a lot of hard work. I know, I've been there, but I had that sub 3 hour target last year and I just crept underneath it, and it 100% pays off. So go out there, enjoy it. Let us know how you get on in the comments section below, and give us a like and a follow.